Remember, big boys don't cry.
It's starting already. Where's the box of Kleenex on the side of the stage?
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
LCD Soundsystem is a band from New York City, mainly helmed by multi-instrumentalist James Murphy. They've become one of my favorite bands, if for nothing else, because they have a killer discography of insanely danceable music. Every single one of their albums has a majority of rock anthems and dance punk tunes that all have such a magnificent effect when translated to a live setting. When it was announced that the band's third album, This Is Happening, would be their last, they decided to pull out all the stops for their last set of live shows at Madison Square Garden, dubbed The Long Goodbye, where they would play a massive amount of their discography in one epic, prolonged send-off. This resulted in a 3-hour-long live album of the same name that was filled with many bangers, songs dusted off after many years of going unplayed, and tracks that had never even been performed up until that point. I mean, this thing is packed with pretty much every banger LCD Soundsystem has ever come out with. You got Dance Yourself Clean, Daft Punk is playing in My House, All My Friends, Get Innocuous, Tired, You Wanted to Hit, Tribulations, Movement, Someone Great, Home, Losing My Edge, and if you know nothing about the band, then none of that made any sense to you. But trust me, everyone is here. And so I want to talk about it, because I find this show provides something wonderfully unique compared to their other studio albums, and I hope to regale to you some of my passion for this band, and more specifically this show, in this video. So let's do it. Dance Yourself Clean is honestly just an alpha move to make the first song of a 3-hour-long set list. It's the song that also starts off their last album, so not only did it make sense to kick off their last show with it, but it's also got one of the best beat drops of any song I've ever listened to. One of the beautiful parts about the studio cut of this song is that the beginning 3-minute intro is very subdued and even quiet, practically begging the listener to turn it up loud just to discern the lyrics, only to absolutely demolish your speakers with that drop and the ensuing 6 minutes of bliss. So I love how in the concert film they imitate those same tactics as I just showed you, and I feel it's something that is elevated so much by the reaction from the crowd. And thinking about it more, this was the last time they were ever going to perform this song live, so you have to imagine that that 3-minute intro had some killer tension along with it. Once the first note of the song was played, everyone immediately knew what the song was, and it serves as a bittersweet combination of both anxiously waiting for the beat to drop, as well as just appreciating the last time that this intro will ever be played. And also, it's just a fun song. I mean, it's probably the most fun rendition of it that I've ever listened to. It's just a great way to start off the live album. It's just one of these, maybe even two. Also, I just love watching the bassist Tyler Pope during this entire first song. He doesn't really have a whole lot to do, so you'll just see shots of him jamming out to the song, and then he'll go, bam, and then he just keeps on dancing. It's just so fun. I love it as a little treat when you're watching the concert film. It's just like, oh, it's a nice little, this is fun to see. Also, you just got to appreciate James's long held out note towards the climax there. Now, as much as I could go into each and every one of the 28 songs performed during this final show, I'm not gonna. Mainly because a lot of my thoughts on each and every one of these tracks can be easily boiled down to, yeah, it's a fun song, what do you want? And I don't really want to be that redundant in this video, but rest assured, I will be very redundant during this video. And most of what you'll miss is just me talking about a great live rendition of an already great LCD song. So let's jump ahead a few tracks so we can talk about the next song. Now, Get Innocuous acts as one example of a motif within LCD Soundsystem's music that I would like to talk about. Especially considering their second album, Sound of Silver, LCD Soundsystem have mastered the art of taking a hook and exercising it well within its limits, but making the absolute most out of it. A good average of their songs are about 6 to 8 minutes long, and I can easily imagine myself many years ago listening to the song, skipping ahead to the middle, realizing it hadn't changed much beyond that point, and just turning it off, which is stupid. What a dumb little boy.
What a damn fool he is.
I find one of the best parts about many LCD tracks is that they give the listener time to really digest and get into the groove of a beat before really pushing the song to new heights. Get Innocuous has this iconic bass line heavily inspired by the Kraftwerk song The Robots, as well as this percussion hook that kicks off the start. You know, the you know the one? You know the one? In the studio cut of this song, it takes about 2 minutes before the first vocals come in. But up until that point, most every element of the song has already faded into view, allowing you to get a good grasp of the song's personality before it really starts to get going. Honestly, the bare instrumental of this song is enough to get people dancing, and I think that's what ends up impressing me a lot about LCD Soundsystem's music. They're all mostly long songs, but never do I feel they go on for too long. There's always enough variation in the drumming patterns or in the modulated synths to keep things interesting. Plus, they're fundamentally great dance beats to their core, which means you likely won't get tired of listening to it even after a full 5 to 7 minutes have passed. It's like putting a song on repeat over and over again, but in this case, one single listen is enough to cater that appetite for the music. But, you know, I would obviously play these 7-minute songs on repeat a lot because these are pretty good songs, but I'm gonna... And of course, the live version just frickin' slaps, man, with the climax much more visceral and intense than in the studio version. Alright, so I really can't help myself, so briefly I'm going to take a pause here to go into a lightning round to talk about the tracks that I won't be going into full detail on in this video. Daft Punk is playing at my house. What a classic banger. I am surprised it took me as long as it did to fully appreciate this song, because I've been listening to LCD's music for so long up until that point, and I never even really gave this song a chance, which is foolish, because it's good. Too Much Love is a softer track, but nevertheless an earworm to shift the dance floor down to a more swaying mood. Tired is probably the hardest song about being tired and not wanting to be woken up, and is pretty good. All My Friends, of course, is a classic LCD track and perhaps their most poppy sounding song they've ever come out with, reminiscent of Age of Consent by New Order, or at least that's the vibe that I get. To be played for the last time at this monumental show is a cause for some very strong emotions from the audience. A favorite treat of mine from the concert film is the shot during the last lines of the song, where we get a good view of the crowd absolutely lost in the emotion of the music in that moment. It's a beautiful thing to see, even more so considering that it's such a good song to vibe with anyhow. Okay, we might go into a few more later, but for now, let's move on to one of the more intriguing and enchanting centerpieces of this live show. So while I would consider there to be 3 main studio albums from LCD Soundsystem, there is technically a 4th that was made as a commission from Nike titled 4533. This record was intended to accompany jogging workouts, and so what resulted was a 46-minute long song. Yeah. Well, technically it's 6 tracks fused into one continuous song, and while it's easy to distinguish when each track changes over, it's still a wonderful feat in creating a sonic experience with heavy influences of disco. It truly was designed to be one continuous listen, and so in commemoration of their last show, they decided to perform the entire record in full, starting with...
Listen up, everybody. You're gonna need some milk or something at your side because this next track do got a bit of spice to it.
I don't know about anyone else, but I get some heavy chic vibes influencing this track, and regardless of that, it's just such a funky tune. The funky bass line, the dazzling keys, the simplistic but charming baritone vocals, it just embodies all the qualities of a quintessential disco funk track that you could easily confuse it as being from that era. A highlight would definitely be when they brought Reggie Watts on to duet the song, leading to an absolutely killer solo towards the end.
Silver talk to me, makes you want to feel like a teenager, until you remember the feelings of a real live emotional teenager. Then you think again. Sound of Silver.
Now, Sound of Silver is really where things start to kick into a very peculiar gear, and I won't lie, in all my times of listening to the many tracks on this live record, I've rarely ever listened to the 4533 section of it except for You Can't Hide. In fact, I had never even heard the full record until a wonderful Christmas present from my lovely mother encouraged me to finally listen to the album all the way through for the first time. So in sitting down to watch this entire concert film, I was very curious as to how this would all play out. Yep. Sound of Silver carries with it a catchy chorus hook as well as a funky yet frantic and unresting bass line, before calming down to an almost meditational groove with a reverbed and delayed kalimba coating the entire atmosphere with a cosmic vibrancy, which is fitting as we smoothly transition into the next part of 4533. That's strange. Hey, is it hot in here, or is it just Nancy Wong's fucking style? Now, before we move on, I do think it wise to point out the absolutely stunning costume changes of one Nancy Wong during this section of the show. I'm no fashionista, but I adore the dress she wears for her chorus during this song. Plus, she has a great voice. It's just, well, you know, Nancy Wong has got it going on. Let's just say that, okay? She's a real sweet treat. Let's move on before I get in trouble. Jesus Christ. Out in Space picks up the pace heavily, starting off with a motif from a song we'll hear later, Someone Great, the instrumental of which is actually the true third track off of 4533, but they chose to replace it with Sound of Silver in this show, which is actually off of the eponymous second album, because they chose to play the full version of Someone Great later, and they said, who cares? Who literally cares? Let's just continue with the song. The song sticks with this upbeat rhythm, chilling out a bit to make way for James's deeply pitched vocals, romantically reminiscing about this favorite song, reminding him about being in space for the first time. The lyrics for this song feel so strongly bonded with the music, almost like they're dancing in tandem with each other, one speaking and the other responding. Every element of this song feels like it's reacting to each other. It's just such an engaging piece of music. And I won't lie, these vocals kinda hit me out of nowhere, and so it's taken me a bit of time to really get used to them, but I have been able to appreciate them in the context of something as long form as this. Especially since it fits with the entire aesthetic of this portion of the show, with video projected of spaceships and astronauts floating in space. Plus, the main chorus holds the song together quite well. This is where I have to laugh, because what this next song is just so weird and wonderful and oddly beautiful, and feels like something that was just on a whole other level to be witnessed in a live setting. The song's got a great rhythm to it, but mostly serves as the backdrop for these, wait for it, ships talking. Oh, he said the thing! Perhaps it's the added combination of the live setting plus the performances from Juan McClane and Shit Robot, yes, that is his real name, but this entire song is just so fun and something so uniquely LCD Soundsystem. The entire performance of 4533 is like LCD Soundsystem's answer to a space odyssey, not just sonically, but also thematically. It's conveying the idea of a funkadelic journey through a sonic space, and it truly comes to a climax with this send-off. And there's just something about those two vocoded vocalists talking to each other with such grandiose poise, but also fumbling goofiness that made me just completely entranced throughout the entire thing. Thankfully, there were subtitles on screen, or else I would have no idea what the heck they were talking about. It's not just about dancing to the music, it's about experiencing the music through this incredibly odd tale. I don't know, it's hard not to sound pretentious when talking about this section, because I can only imagine how strange it must have been to experience this live during the last show of this band. And this fantastical detour ends with a chorus of droning vocals accompanied by a simple kick beat that slows to a crawl as the song fades out. Look, I'll be honest, I don't know what you want me to say about this. It's something that you really have to listen for yourself, because otherwise it's just an idiot trying to transcribe to you what is truly meant to just be experienced and felt in the moment of the live show. But I feel it would have otherwise been a disservice to go through this live album and not talk about this monumental performance. That goes against what might traditionally be at a live rock concert with as many more accessible bangers to play as LCD Soundsystem has under their belt. And I'm surprised it's taken me this long to say this, but if you get the chance, go listen to the live album. In fact, check out the band as well, because as much as I'll try, there is no way that I'm going to be able to do the entire band justice in this video.
It's Australia 2008.
Now that we're back into the more familiar material, I want to take this song to mention something that I truly love about the concert film, that being all the little vignettes you can catch throughout the entire show. Every so often, you'll catch something within the crowd, like this couple lovingly embracing while the person alone next to them is equally as enamored, but instead with the music. Or another couple finding such joy together as well, dancing to another one of their songs. It's something that I feel brilliantly aids in transcribing the emotional experience of the whole evening. And I chose to use North American Scum to mention this because I feel this song on the live record acts as a great example of how much fun the band seems to be having playing at this show, as well as how much fun the audience is having listening to it. There's just so many great shots of James smiling and Arcade Fire having a blast singing along, and the crowd just losing their goddamn minds to this song. It's a beautiful thing to watch, and I feel the visual accompaniment of this song greatly enhances the experience of listening to it. It's like how movies and shows can be funnier when there's people around to share the laughter with. Here, it's fun to see everyone enjoying this song in particular so much. The vibrancy of the music and the energy is just so powerful that it emanates off the screen and infuses directly into here. The feels. What I'm about to talk about is a fantastic trio of songs that perfectly match with each other and just lead to banger after banger after banger after banger for the entire rest of the show. I mean, the latter half of this puppy is just packed with all the hits, and fittingly enough, we're starting with a You Wanted a Hit, you know, a perfect specimen. Now, I generally like the studio versions of LCD Soundsystem songs. The production is usually very tight and clear and close, where you can really get to appreciate the timbre of the sounds, like the synths and the guitars. And that will always be something unique with the studio recordings that won't translate the exact same for a live show. And in the case of this song, I'm kind of glad that's the case. There is a guitar solo in the middle of this song that I don't really like in the studio version. This is just my opinion. I mean, I like the rest of the song, thinks it sounds pretty good, but when it gets to this solo, things kind of take a turn. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play you the original solo from the studio version, and then I'm going to play for you what it sounds like during the live performance. For no reason. I don't know. I don't want to influence the popular vote. I just want to do some testing. I'm sorry, I think it's so clunky and awkward and discordant, but not in the usual way that LCD seems to pull off most of the time. The skittish, offbeat timing of the guitar strums in the right channel, along with the incongruous and metallic arpeggiated synths in the left channel, don't work well together, in my opinion, and really stop the song dead in its tracks for this really clumsy detour. But then when you hear the solo in the live version, oh boy! Oh, see, I'm already dizzy from that. That's how good it was. It was so good. It may be because the meat of the guitar riff and the arpeggios blend together much better in the sound wall of the cheering crowd and reverbed feedback from the speakers. But personally, that solo just hits so much better that I almost can't go back to the studio version after hearing it. And now, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the exact same example again, because this next song rips so hard that it's going to need an industrial strength sewing kit. For Tribulations, I actually like the studio track as a whole more than I do with You Wanted a Hit. But this song is another great example of how the studio cuts almost have this new life breathed into them with a live performance. On the studio version, the tempo is slower and James's vocals have a much more classically diva-ish, or I don't really know what you would call it. I don't know what the word would be. You hear James's vocals on these songs and it's very like, ooh la la, you know, very, oh, you know, which is something I feel is worth appreciating on the original track. But again, when you hear this bad boy live and you hear the faster tempo and the more immediate drums and guitars, it just oozes fun rock. This song too is elevated so much by its live performance. James has said in the past that he's referred to their live act as the greatest LCD Soundsystem cover band, and I think this set of songs helps demonstrate this perfectly. They are able to take these songs that have such a unique life of their own on their respective albums and really infuse them with an excitingly intense new energy for a live show. The studio cut is great to appreciate on its own, but hearing the live version almost makes it difficult for me to look back. Plus, it always has the potential to introduce people to the studio version if they've never heard it before. There have been many times where I've gone to see a band live and they played a song that I wasn't really too familiar with, and then after the show, I just became crazy about it, and it just took that live performance to really get me to appreciate the song and really get into it. It's the magic of live music, I guess. We gotta do one more. This is gonna be a good one. Movement, next to Tired, is the hardest song LCD Soundsystem has ever written. It comes from their self-titled debut album, which is an entire era of the band's most rock-influenced bangers of their whole discography. Daft Punk is playing at my house, Thrills, Tribulations, Movement, on repeat. There's enough hefty bangers to go around. Even songs that didn't end up on the main album, like Beat Connection, or Tired, or Give It Up, you're gonna need a cigarette after those puppies. Anyway, the song just slaps, so let's just appreciate it for what it is. It's definitely worth noting how this 3-track ensemble just unleashes Al Doyle on the guitar. He absolutely kills it on these songs, on all accounts, not just the solos, though he does a magnificent job at those as well. And seriously, these 3 tracks work so incredibly well together, complementing each other back to back. They bring the house down, I love them, and still, the show just keeps on coming with these bangers. And hey, look at that. Speaking of costume changes, it was getting a bit hot in here. I had to change into something lighter. So aside from the majority of 4533, Yeah was the last song that I really got into from the live album, and I honestly don't know why. I probably heard it from the studio version and thought it sounded too weird. I really don't know, but ever since I got into it, it's definitely become one of my all-time favorite LCD tracks. The song morphs a few times throughout its duration, starting out as a relatively subdued bass groove with added percussion, percussion to aid the rhythm. Then, with its second phase evolving into a more classic 70s sounding funky disco song with a phased clav and that same bass line returning, but with a bit more flavor accented onto itself. And then, oh boy, and then... This new ecstatically frantic bass synth comes driving in, bringing the song up into a much more vibrant and intense pace. The yas are screamed louder, the drums are more enthusiastic and brash, the lights flashing along with the bass amongst the crowd are incredibly electric and joyfully frenetic. The whole song becomes this ecstatic menagerie of excited percussion and harsh but fun synths, and the whole song just tears through the road at 88 miles per hour this boy goes. It works so well as being so incredibly simple, and I think the best way I've seen it described as is the most fun you can have using just one chord, and I couldn't agree more. And for the record, this puppy's a real neck compromiser. I'm not one to really dance as much with my legs or my hips. I'm more of a head thrasher. So I guarantee you, if I heard this song live, my neck would be pretty compromised by the next morning. Now, these past 4 tracks have been a blast and just a force to be reckoned with, but before we jump down a bit further towards the end of the set list, I think it would be a sin not to mention the song that comes directly after Yeah. But we also have to mention the absolutely massive synth interlude that perfectly transitions from the ending of the previous track into the start of the next, played wonderfully by the lovely Gavilan Russum and Tyler Pope. I mean, I don't have that much to say about it, other than pointing out how many consider this to be one of the greatest breakup songs ever written, which is morbidly a bit funny to me, considering the song was actually written around the death of James Murphy's therapist. However, I agree that it's a pretty fun song to venue this bittersweet melody about when someone great is gone. It's a song that I imagine means a lot to many of LCD's fans, and so I think I have to mention it here just to appreciate it for existing. And it seems to have affected many of its listeners for the better, and that's one of the magical things that music can do, and so I love it for that. There was also something really cozy about watching this entire concert film for the first time. I had already been well acquainted with the songs and their live counterparts, as well as watching the documentary about this final show, but there's something brilliant in how they captured the energy of this show that translated so well to a solo viewing within the pitch black confines of my room. Obviously, I wasn't at this show, so I'm reliving other people's memories of this through a documented account. And so because of this, the extravagancy of this finale is a bit lost on me, but I gained something else by watching it in a smaller and more controlled space. Don't get me wrong, I was head thrashing away to a lot of the bangers, but I also couldn't help but be a passive observer to just admire the fantastic production that went into this show. And moments like Someone Great gave me time to digest the energy of this live show and find a personal connection within it, eliciting a feeling of nostalgia for something that I never really got to experience. It was just this weird sort of lonely pocket that I immersed myself in, where I was completely locked into this show as if I were there, but since I was instead at home with all of my belongings around me and so much personal attachment to the physical setting, the two natures mixed together and created something much more intimate than I would have ever had otherwise. There was just such a beauty to watching this extravagant live show alone in my room. Alright, again, before we go to the end of this, I do need to mention a few more tracks that we've missed that I gotta talk about real quickly. Losing My Edge, classic LCD song, practically the anthem for James Murphy. Bluesy, my blue, blue, but I was there! Home, one of the how do I say it? Home, one of the happiest songs LCD Soundsystem has ever written. Beautiful send-off to their third record, This Is Happening, even reincorporating the vocal melody from the intro to Dance Yourself Clean, which started off that record. How lovingly fitting. All I Want. The arpeggio sounds a little bit better on the studio record, but coming after Home, I think allows the song to perfectly flourish on its own. Us Versus Them from earlier in the set, also a great track. It just sounds good. I don't know what else to say. And like I said before, most of what I have to say about these tracks is that they sound great live. There's a fun energy to all of them. They just completely slap. Alrighty, and with that, let's dive into the closing tracks of this legendary behemoth. Jump Into the Fire, the only other cover song performed during the show after Bye Bye Bayou, is a heckin' banger. A real roof raiser. A supersonic ground smasher. This was originally written by Henry Nilsson. In fact, you may otherwise know of this song from Goodfellas. You seen Goodfellas? You know that scene? The scene in Goodfellas? Yeah, you know that scene. You know that scene. Oh, I knew you're smart. You're so smart. I think what impresses me most about this song is that even after 3 hours of performing live music from exhilarating bangers to more cognitive musical odysseys, James and company still have just as much enthusiasm as they started off the show with. I mean, James had movement and back to back, 2 songs that are incredibly demanding in the screaming vocal department, and yet here he is in Jump Into the Fire, just carrying away. My voice is already like freaking wearing out from 2 hours of recording.
Phil Mossman, ladies and gentlemen. So this is our last song. Okay, let me point this out. That even now at the end of our band, I fucking didn't say that so you would say, oh no. It wasn't the false, it wasn't like, it's our last song. Oh, it's our last song. to see us, and we want to thank you very much. Everybody, and the people who are sitting up there who have a hard time seeing, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for coming and doing this with us on both sides. And all of our friends, people that we know are in this area here, so give them a wave. They're good people. They're not shitty people who wanted free tickets. They're good people. And my family, hi. And my sister and brother here. And their kids. And hi, you guys. And I hope it's okay. I'm wearing my dad's watch. So tonight.
So, I did a bit of a fib. This actually wasn't the last LCD Soundsystem show. They actually came back in 2015 to release a Christmas single. Then they came back in 2016 to do a whole new tour. And then they came back in 2017 just to do a whole new album. But even with all of that in mind, this last song still really gets me in the feels. You'd think that with the knowledge that this wasn't the last time they'd ever play these songs, or even make music altogether, that this finale would lose some of its spectacle. But it honestly hasn't been soiled for me in the slightest. It's like rewatching a great film. You know how it ends, you know the fate of its characters, but when the music hits just right, and the atmosphere is so perfectly preserved from the first time you saw it, it's enough to bring those very same emotions back up all over again. I actually recently went to an LCD Soundsystem show earlier last year. That's where the shirt comes in. And though I enjoyed the show, it was a bit of an alienating experience. I went solo, so when I showed up and waited for the band to come out, I felt claustrophobic amongst all the other people around me. The other concert goers didn't seem like people I'd get along with, and it felt kind of bitter and disheartening standing around stuck inside my own head, watching everyone else with their respective friends and partners chat amongst themselves. But then the band came out. And in an instant, all of those self-aware observations disappeared, and it became solely about hearing the band play some music, and that is something that I will always learn to cherish. Taking words from my mom, music is like a best friend to me, and so being able to enjoy it is one of the greatest gifts life has ever given. Personally, music has such a profound power to invoke such visceral emotions out of me. It's safe to say it shaped my life and who I am today, and to be able to listen to bands like LCD Soundsystem and really get into their music and feel a part of it in some way is nothing short of a joy. And that's what I love about this live record. It beautifully captures the exciting nature of LCD's music and translates it to wonderful live renditions of so many classic songs, as well as providing a show that can only be described as uniquely LCD. I mean, what other band would stop the hits not even halfway through their farewell show to pull off this musically ambitious halftime show? The concert film as well captures the feeling of the live show exceptionally and adds a whole other dimension to the music by making the viewer feel like they're reliving the show. But it truly becomes something special when the visuals and everything work together to encapsulate the pure spirit of this night. Thank you, LCD Soundsystem, for making this incredible music, and thank you, the viewer, for watching this video. I really hope that you got something from it, and I hope that with all of my rambling and my haphazard analyses, you go and check out this band, or this album, or anything to do with them, because I genuinely think it's worth your time. And feel free to comment below and tell me what some of your favorite music or bands are. I genuinely would love to hear what you all like listening to. And I will leave you with the rest of this song to play us out. But for now, I hope you're all doing well. That's the video.